ever get that feeling? Like, you're going through history, right? And you find someone, and you're just blown away by how much they actually shaped the world. Well, get ready to be blown away, because today we're going deep, deep diving on this guy, Al-Ghazali.
Al-Ghazali is so captivating because he's not just a scholar, he's a seeker. This is the Islamic golden age we're talking about, right? And he's wrestling with these huge questions, theology, philosophy, mysticism. He really goes there.
He really dives in.
Oh, yeah.
A true Renaissance man way before, like, the actual Renaissance.
Absolutely.
And we are digging into his life and his work. And trust me, this is not just some dusty history lesson, okay? This is about these big, timeless questions like faith, reason, searching for meaning, things that, honestly, we're still trying to figure out today.
Totally. His journey is like a roadmap, for anyone who's ever felt that pull towards something bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so rewind the clock. Picture it, 11th century Iran.
Okay.
This place is buzzing with intellectual energy.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where Al-Ghazali comes in, born in Tus, 1058 CE.
And he hits the ground running, right? I mean, he becomes this brilliant scholar, a professor at this prestigious school, the Nizami Madrasa in Baghdad.
Oh, wow.
Like, think, Harvard of the medieval world.
Wow, okay.
Students are flocking to his lectures. Everyone's talking about his ideas. He's like an academic rock star.
Okay, so he's killing it.
Yeah.
But then,
Yeah.
plot twist.
Plot twist.
He hits a wall.
He does.
And not like a midlife crisis, more like a mid-intellect crisis.
Yes, exactly. He's at the top of his game, right? But he's wrestling with this question. It's like, what's the point of all this knowledge if it's not connected to something, deeper?
Yeah, he's got all the accolades, all the success, but it's like...
It's not enough.
It's not enough. Something's missing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that sends him on a completely different path. Like, he turns to Sufism,
Okay.
which is this, mystical tradition within Islam, and embarks on this intense, like, spiritual quest. And we're not talking a weekend retreat here.
No.
This is over a decade.
Wow.
Of deep inner exploration. He walks away from the prestige, the position.
He's like later?
Dives headfirst into the unknown.
Wow. Talk about a life change. Okay, so he drops out to like go find himself. But like then what?
Right.
Does he become like a Sufi hermit? Never to be seen again.
He could have.
Right.
But here's where it gets really interesting. So after years, right, of this like intense spiritual work, he comes back to teaching.
Okay.
But he's transformed
Yeah.
the knowledge that he was questioning. Now it's infused with this deep experiential understanding.
He's like, I've been there.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's bridging these two worlds, the intellectual and the spiritual.
Yes.
So what did this new Al-Ghazali, the one who's been through the fire, so to speak,
Right.
what did he actually contribute?
Well, he was prolific. He wrote a ton. And his works became super influential, sparked all these debates that honestly are still going on today.
Wow.
One of his most impactful and definitely controversial books is The Incoherence of the Philosophers.
Okay, the title alone. I'm intrigued. I need to know more.
He's going after some big names,
Yeah.
okay? Thinkers like Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, also known as Avicenna.
Okay, yeah.
These guys were trying to, like, harmonize Greek philosophy with Islamic thought, and Al-Ghazali wasn't buying it.
Why not? That seems like a worthy endeavor, right?
Yeah. He argued that philosophy, while useful, it has its limits.
Yeah.
You can't, he felt, fully grasp the mysteries of God, the soul, the afterlife, these big things, through philosophy alone.
Okay.
Like, take the whole debate about the eternity of the world.
Yeah.
Some philosophers, following Aristotle, thought the world always existed.
Right.
But Al-Ghazali, following Islamic teachings, was like, no way. God created the universe.
Okay.
He even pointed out these logical inconsistencies in the philosophers' arguments, hence the incoherence.
Okay, so he's like drawing this line in the sand between faith and reason.
It's more nuanced than that. He's saying reason, it's powerful, right? But it can't operate in a vacuum. It has to be grounded in revelation, in the spiritual realities that are revealed through scripture and, prophetic traditions.
So it's not ditch logic. It's don't forget there are things beyond logic.
Right. And this wasn't just some abstract philosophical debate for him. This goes to the core of how we understand God, creation, our place in it all.
It's a big deal. Okay, so The Incoherence of the Philosophers, mic drop, right? But he did more than that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Our notes, they mentioned something called Asherite theology. What is that?
Oh, yeah, the Incoherence of the Philosophers. That was really just the beginning. Al-Ghazali was deep into Islamic theology, and he became a major, major proponent of the Asherite school.
Okay, so we're going deeper into theology.
Yeah.
So what's the Asherite school all about?
Think of it this way. It's like saying, hold on, don't try to put God in a box. Okay? Don't limit his power based on our, limited human understanding of like how things work.
Okay.
That's Asherism.
Okay.
They were all about God's absolute power, his freedom. And they said he's not bound by these like our concepts of cause and effect,
Right.
or even like the laws of nature as we think we understand them.
Right, right. It's not just like God's in control. It's like rethinking what control even means.
Exactly. Al-Ghazali, building on this Asherite idea, he argued that what we see as like cause and effect, it's actually God's direct intervention constantly.
Wow.
All the time.
Okay.
Like fire doesn't burn wood because that's just like what fire does. It burns wood because in every single moment, God wills it to burn.
Whoa. That's a pretty radical way of like looking at the universe, right?
Yeah.
It's less like a machine, just running on autopilot and more like this, I don't know, this constant dynamic expression of God's will.
And that is a huge takeaway from Al-Ghazali's theology, like this emphasis on God's active presence in literally everything.
Okay.
Every aspect of creation. It challenges us to rethink this whole laws of nature thing. He was like, these laws, they're not like independent things.
Okay.
They're reflections of God's consistent actions.
Okay, so where does like human free will fit into all of this?
Right.
If God is like orchestrating everything,
Yeah.
what does that mean for, our choices?
That's a big one. And Al-Ghazali, he really wrestled with this, like a lot.
Okay.
He came up with this really nuanced view where he's like, okay, God's ultimately in control, but he also wanted to make room for human beings to actually matter,
Right.
to have a real role to play.
Right.
So he says God creates both our actions, what we do, and our ability to choose those actions.
Okay. So it's not like we're puppets,
Right.
but he still knows.
Yeah. It's more like God gives us the capacity to act, even though ultimately he knows what we're going to do.
It's complicated.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a really complex theological concept.
Right.
But the main thing here is that Al-Ghazali did not think God's power meant we don't have free will.
Right.
He saw them as connected in this way that honestly is beyond, like, our human understanding can totally grasp.
Right. We can't fully wrap our minds around it.
Right.
Okay, so we've got this incredible scholar, right, grappling with these huge questions in philosophy, theology, but he's got this whole other side too.
Oh, yeah.
The Sufi mystic thing.
Right.
So how did that fit in with everything else?
This is where it gets even more, like, mind-blowing with Al-Ghazali, right? Like, he's not content just being a theologian, a philosopher.
No.
He saw the limits of, like, reason by itself. He really believed that true understanding, especially about God, required a different kind of connection, like
Right.
a direct, experience.
Oh.
And this led him to embrace Sufism, but not as something separate from Islam. To him, it was like the inner, the heart of Islam.
So it's like he's saying, look, we've got the intellectual side of faith, but there's this whole other level. It's experiential, it's heart-centered.
Yes, exactly.
And that's where it's at.
He saw the legalistic side of Islam, right, with the outward rules and rituals. And those are important, don't get me wrong. But he saw that as like the starting point.
Okay.
True fulfillment, spiritual fulfillment that comes from these inner qualities, humility, sincerity, a direct experience of the divine.
Okay.
And that's what Sufism is all about.
So he's bridging this gap, right, between what people see as like the outer practice of Islam and the inner journey of Sufism.
He saw them as like two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
You need both. Both are essential for a balanced, truly fulfilling spiritual life. And it's this blending of the inner and outer, the, legal and the mystical. That's what made his impact so huge.
Okay.
Like, he wrote this massive work, The Revival of the Religious Sciences, and it's basically like a guidebook, how to live a truly Islamic life. It covers everything from like the outward stuff, observing the law to the inner work, cultivating those spiritual virtues.
It's like holistic spirituality.
Yes.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
It sounds like he really wanted to show how you could live a meaningful, purposeful life.
Yes.
Where you're thinking deeply, but you're also, you're putting it into practice. It's like mind, body, spirit all together.
And that brings us back to his views on faith and reason. He wasn't anti-reason, not at all. But he definitely saw its limits, where it was appropriate to use it and where it,
Right, but it had to take a step back.
Yeah, exactly.
So where did reason fit in then to his worldview?
He thought it was essential, for certain things, like understanding the natural world, how things work, interpreting religious texts, what they actually mean, defending Islamic beliefs.
Okay, so making the case.
Right, like engaging in debates. But for Al-Ghazali, when you got to those really big questions, the nature of God, the afterlife, what happens after we die, all that.
The mysteries.
The mysteries, that's when reason had to, take a back seat. You needed faith. You needed spiritual experience.
Yeah.
He said, trying to grasp the infinite, God with our limited human minds.
Yeah.
It's like trying to capture the entire ocean in, a teacup.
Right. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And those spiritual experiences, for him, that wasn't just some vague idea,
Right.
That came from the practice of Sufism. That's where you find certainty, real certainty, not just through, intellectual arguments.
Right. You're living it. You're experiencing it.
Exactly. It's not about abandoning your brain. It's about going beyond it, experiencing the divine directly. Meditation, contemplation, cultivating this, constant awareness of God's presence. That's where the real transformation is.
So Al-Ghazali, he wasn't saying pick faith or reason. He was saying recognize when to use which one.
Exactly. Both are important. Faith and reason, when you understand them, when you know how to use them, they both lead to a much, much more, I think, a more complete understanding of ourselves, the universe, God.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
Okay. So I'm thinking about his impact.
Yeah.
Right? Because this all sounds very personal, very inward focused, right? How did his ideas actually change things in the world?
Oh, he had a huge impact, seismic. He shifted the whole intellectual landscape in the Islamic world. Think about it. His critique of all those rationalist philosophers.
Yeah, the incoherence we were talking about.
Right, the incoherence of the philosophers, that sparked a massive debate, and it really contributed to this decline of certain philosophical schools and the rise of, we talked about it earlier, Asharite theology. That became the main way of thinking about God, especially in Sunni Islam.
So this isn't just some abstract, ideas are clashing kind of thing. He changed the course of history.
Absolutely. And it wasn't limited to the Islamic world either. Think about it. His works, they get translated into Latin, and you have these major Christian thinkers, Thomas Aquinas, for example, grappling with Al-Ghazali's ideas. I mean, these two giants, right, from totally different religious backgrounds, centuries apart, but asking the same questions: faith, reason, the nature of reality.
That's wild. But it makes sense. I mean, we're all human, right? We're all searching for that meaning. We want to know what it all means. It's a universal thing.
100%. And that's what makes Al-Ghazali so relevant. Even today, we live in this world that's all about what you can see, what you can measure, the material stuff. But Al-Ghazali, he's like this wake-up call. Don't forget about the spiritual side. That's part of who we are too.
He's reminding us there's more to life than what we can see and touch.
Yes. And he's not just critiquing. He offers us a path. His whole life, he walked that path. He lived it, integrating the intellectual and the spiritual, the inner and the outer. He shows us it's possible. You can live a life grounded in faith, but also use your reason. You can appreciate this material world, but also recognize that there's something deeper.
It's that balance.
It's all about balance.
So, after spending all this time with Al-Ghazali, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from this deep dive?
His message, it's timeless, It's this call to wake up, see the deeper reality, find that connection to something bigger than ourselves. His work, it can be challenging, definitely, but it's really inspiring. He reminds us that the search for truth, it's an adventure, and sometimes it's more about the journey than the destination.
The journey is the destination, as they say.
Exactly.
Don't be afraid of the big questions.
Yes.
Challenge what you think you know. Go deep inside yourself.
You might be surprised what you find.
So well said. It's been amazing exploring the life and work of Al-Ghazali. This is someone who really shaped the world, and his ideas, they're still making waves today. So if you're listening and something sparked your curiosity, don't ignore it. Pick up one of his books, learn more, start your own journey. You never know where might lead you. That's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.